match. So it's 2-1. United States fall to Germany. We got to start at the beginning, right? It didn't all like get wrapped up in a pretty bow in that first half. That is not what happened in this game whatsoever. Took a little while to get to that 2-1, and it got a little exciting towards the end of that second half. But let's start at the top. Let's start at the beginning, because like you said, Lisa, we mentioned about individual players that we would have liked to have seen get time in this game. So let's start with the starting 11. This is how they lined up for Germany. Casey Murphy got the start in net. Emily Fox, Alana Cook, Naomi Girma, Sophia Huerta, Andy Sullivan, Rose Lavelle, Lindsey Herrera, Sophia Smith, Alex Morgan, and Mallory Pugh to round out the starting 11 for the United States. Any surprises? Any pleasantries? What were your reactions when you saw this lineup drop? Lori, let's go with you.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think we all were wrong about Listener starting. I saw that, but I mean, listen, this isn't the first time we've seen Casey Murphy start, obviously. So great performance by her, and just outside of that, I don't really think there was any surprises, I would say. We talked about maybe the front line, what that would look like if they were going to keep Sophia Smith centrally, even though I think we all knew that she'd probably be out in the wing anyway, but that was something that we'd be looking for. Midfield stays the same, and that's a typical back line that we've seen him go with as well. So I think outside of Listener, with Casey Murphy getting the start, again, credit to her. And, just going off of what you all said earlier too, I mean, there's some really great moments this game. I mean, listen, we're all rooting for this team, so you never want to see this team lose. Right. But also this is when you're going to, the same thing that you're speaking about, Sandra, and taking away, looking at players who are stepping up in moments that Vlatko and catching the eye of Vlatko. I also think as an entire team, it's going to be beneficial to be able to dissect these games, hopefully, and really get some key takeaways on how they move forward in the next 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, definitely about how they learn from this and go forward from it. And I think when we look back to the October friendlies in Europe against England and Spain, there was growth in this match against Germany. But starting lineup, I mean, I'm pleased that Casey Murphy got the starting goal. I mean, I said Nair was going to play back there, but I think that Murphy deserves minutes and time against a top three, number 3 in the world ranked Germany, a team that's going to put pressure on and ask questions of the United States backline and ask questions of Casey Murphy. I mean, this is a game in which she has to make saves, and we saw that, and has to organize from the back. And I think it's a good test for Murphy. And despite getting the loss and how that came, and of course we're going to talk about it, I think that it was a good showing from Murphy in what she was able to do, the save she was able to make, even her response after the goal went in. And we can dive into that a little bit. But starting wise, I think it's well-deserved for Murphy to get the start. Cook and Girma in the center back duo, it's their 5th start together this year. I mean, Girma deserves that spot. I think there are some question marks around Cook at this point for me when I look at kind of how this game unfolded. But nothing at all surprising with the HSL in the middle. Herrera, Sullivan, Lavelle, that's it. I mean, you can close your eyes and throw a dart at a wall and you're going to hit the center trio for Vlatko-Andonovski. But Pugh Morgan Smith with Morgan back in it, Pugh back in it. I mean, that was another one that wasn't too surprising in the front line. And then for the German side, rolling out in a 4-back, I think that was a little bit of a question mark, how they were going to set up maybe defensively, and having 4 in the back against Pugh Morgan Smith and then Lavelle pushing higher. I think that was an interesting kind of rotation and formational setup from US versus Germany. But overall, I mean, we have to talk about it, how the first 45 minutes, the first 10 minutes versus the second 35 minutes, honestly.
No, I'm with you 100%. I think, when the starting 11 dropped, I did laugh about that. I was like, well, we were all wrong about having somebody like Nair in net. But I was pleased to see the duo again of Cook and Girma. Especially just out of the pair of European friendlies where they got the start together against England, but in front of Nair, right? So here we had a little bit of a flip script. We had this same duo who went head to head against England, but with Murphy in net, who got the start in that game against Spain. So I was definitely looking right at the defensive shape of things, in this game against Germany, but I was also looking at somebody like a Mallory Pugh, inserted into this starting lineup. Like, how was Mallory Pugh going to look in a game like this with the United States women's national team against Germany? This is a player, unlike some of the other players who were involved, not just in this current the 2-game series and training camps, but like in this actual game, because we're looking at players like a Smith or a Coffee who saw time tonight, or a Girma or a Morgan, players who had a little bit more of an extended, NWSL postseason versus somebody like a Pugh. And, Pugh, one of these players who was not part of that European tour. So essentially, her first game in several weeks, like that comes in, like that was lingering in the back of my mind. Like, how is, this player who had put together an incredibly good NWSL season, was an MVP finalist, but has kind of had a bit of, disjointed game time. It's sort of close out this calendar year. Like, how was she going to look inserted back into this starting 11? And as we saw the starting 11 drop, it's like, okay, well, maybe right now as it stands, with all things considered at this point in the year, potentially Vlatko's ideal front three in terms of a Smith, Pugh, and Morgan. So that didn't necessarily surprise me, but I definitely was trying to pay attention to how that was going to look in this first half. Like, was there going to be some disjointedness? And I think you mentioned it already, Lisa, like that first opening 10 minutes, that's probably where we got to start. I think it was pretty evident that maybe this team was tasked with like trying to, commit to a good counter press, but Germany kind of gobbling things up along the way, and looks to sort of had that momentum for at least that very, very first early phase of this game.
Yeah, I think opening 10 minutes, it was Germany coming out. I mean, it almost looked as if the United States was looking to get settled in, like they were trying to read what Germany was doing, how they could break those possessions up. And Germany was passing the ball really well. They had a great counter press that was putting a lot of pressure on the United States back line. They were getting chances, putting a lot of pressure under Cook, Girma, Fox, where it's in the back line, Casey Murphy having to start this game and immediately get hands on the ball and try to control things a little bit. It was the midfield, I think, for Germany, the opening 10 minutes, lights out, and especially compared to the United States. It took a few minutes for them to get into it. I think around like the 10, 12 minute mark is when things really started to shift. And there was a few minutes of pretty even back and forth play. And then the United States figured out their groove and set the tempo. And I think that in a 90-minute game, 10 minutes at the start can be incredibly dangerous. Yes, it may take some time for a team to get their legs under them, feel out their opponent, and understand where the dangerous spaces are, who's popping into those spaces, because the forwards movement for Germany to start this match were fantastic, asking a lot of questions of U.S. defenders in midfield to pick up and mark those half spaces and watch them get on the turn. But in the grand scheme of a game, you can hurt teams in those first 5-10 minutes. And Germany almost hurt the United States in those opening minutes. And it's thanks to players like Casey Murphy that kept them in the game, getting some saves and kind of holding off that pressure in the opening 10.
I'm with you. Anything stand out in maybe the opening 10 to 15 for you, Lori, in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what we expected, and we talked about it in the preview as well. I mean, this is something we saw Germany do frequently. I mean, an opening game of Euro was a 4-0 against Denmark, and a lot of it was sending McGool forward, pressing, repressing, sending numbers forward, overloading the back line. And just agree with everything you all said, which is just essentially like, it's just about managing those moments, right? I think it was a little bit of a shock with having to deal with how many players they're going to throw forward. And that's what makes, I think, this current Germany team exciting and special, because they have, we see Pop playing a little bit deeper than where we've seen her in the Euros, which is as the number 9. So they have a fluidity to their attack that I think is also something we talked about, right? The midfield is having a little bit of Spanish-esque style to them, but also a directness, ability to go direct and have speed to beat in behind, but also be able to play. So, for the credit to the U.S., though, just managing those moments. And then I thought the latter part of the first half dominated. In fact, could have gone into that at halftime, maybe up 2-0. So I thought there were some really quality moments in that first half once the U.S. were able to kind of get a hold and realize that they could do some of the same things to Germany and press the back line, pick off balls that we saw Germany do to us in the first 10.
Yeah, I was anticipating. I thought Germany was going to go up in that first half, in the opening 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like that's how good they looked to me.
It was a little bit of like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. It was like, let's organize. Let's get behind the ball. Let's figure. Yeah. But I agree, Laura. I think that it did shift. And the last 15, 20 minutes of that first half, it was all United States. We saw so many positives and bright lights that at halftime, I was kind of saying to myself, wow, I'm really glad Germany didn't score in those first 10 minutes. That was looking dangerous. But also, how did we not score in those last 15? So I'm sure Germany saying the same thing, like, wow, it's 0-0 at this point. I mean, that's when I was like, this is a great game between these sides, because the United States was creating so many opportunities and getting chances, and their counter press was working. And the transition game that we saw from the United States was really, really fun to watch.
It opened up a little bit. I'm with you on that. I think after maybe a nervy or a rocky 15 minutes, whatever you want to call it, the period of time in which a team needs to sort of settle itself together, it was good to see, somebody like Pugh getting on the ball constantly and trying to generate, Smith and her making her alternating runs, right? Alex Morgan kind of like ensuring that they're, opening up, pockets of space for some of these other players to try to capitalize and execute on. And it felt a little bit end to end, right? And as the, first half sort of started to draw to a close, felt a little bit more even, than anything else. It felt both even and end to end for me as it went into the second half. And I felt, going into halftime, that 0-0 was kind of a bit of an honest reflection of the game, I think, at this point. How about you guys?
Yeah, I would say honest at that point. I mean, I think that Germany could have scored in the opening 10, and it was kind of like, good thing they didn't. And I think that the United States could have scored, like, right, honest in the sense that this is why we love the beautiful game of soccer, that there are chances and you can make great saves and mistakes happen. But I think that there were moments where the United States probably should have put it away, or at least forced Germany on their heels a little bit more. I mean, it made for a really great first half because it was 0-0. And that's where the conversations come in as to like, okay, what needs to be done better in the second half, and not just like, let's maintain, let's keep a Chucky egg.
No, I'm with you. I think in terms of like the actual stat line of things at the end of this game, I believe possession was pretty much split, mostly 50-50 at this point as they went into halftime. And I think in terms of like actual attempts, like on target, it was like USA 2 and Germany 1 at this point. And then in terms of total shots, it was like 9-6, USA up over Germany. So I think like, going into halftime, it felt mostly even for me. And I was, like, the writer in me was excited because, got to make predictions in the previews. And I was like, both on Attacking Thirds preview, I said, hey, maybe this has the makings of a draw in it. I kept that going for the written preview. And I said, I think it's going to be a draw, like 1-1. And I put a little bit more into it. And in my preview on .com, I mentioned like, you know what, it's going to be 1-1. And I think the goals are going to come in the second half. And they did. So while I was like absolutely thrilled for that, there were still some moments of like uneasiness for me kind of watching this game as it sort of continued to develop throughout the second half. And I think honestly, it maybe started for me like right as the two teams, each made their return for the second half, because as we saw these two teams return to play the second 45, it was Germany, right, with the early adjustment first. So we saw that head coach Martina Voss-Tecklenburg went ahead and made the adjustment on her side of things first with an immediate substitution at the half, and we saw Andonovski just roll out with the same 11, wanting to see, probably a little bit more from that 11 that rolled out in the first half. Were you surprised to see the same 11, come on out and get a crack at the second half, or did you want to see some early adjustments, and who, if so?
I don't think I was shocked. I mean, I kind of Krumbiegel, who came in for for Germany was, I mean, she got the game winner, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought she was good, and she caused some problems just with some of her runs and behind. So it was a smart decision. I don't know what was behind that, right? I know there's been a lot of talk about them, the travel coming over, them being tired, a lot of load on their players. So maybe not as surprising that you get an early substitution on their side. But I kind of figured going in after the momentum that they had in the latter part of that first half, that things would stay the same, right? And then we would start to see, because I think that is a conversation that we could be having as well. To your point, Sandra, and there's been a lot of that around the men's World Cup and like the load on players, where you're at. I mean, you could really make that same argument here, and where players are coming off the NWSL with Malpute, to your point, having several weeks off, to some people playing just a little bit over a week ago, right? So where they are, and I think all of those things at this point in time in the season come into play. But no, not shocked. I was happy to see and Coffee come in and getting some decent minutes, not just like, the last 10 or so, to see what that looked like. Obviously, we had mentioned about Dunn coming into the midfield in the preview and potentially what that looked like. Gets subbed in for Fox. And then some other, up top with Trinity and Meg coming in as well. And I think, those two players did a good job of like bringing in some energy. I thought Trinity was really good with the press and breaking up plays. But no, I mean, just to go back to initial, not shocked that we rolled out the same.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. The 45 minutes of the first half for the players starting, like, I think especially as they grew into that game and as the partnerships grew between those players throughout the first 45 minutes, I imagine that he would want to keep that going, right? We've seen a lot of consistency from Vlatko in doing that. I mean, you look at the front line with Pugh, Smith, and Morgan, they've gotten a lot of starts together and they've gotten a lot of time together. Even think back to CONCACAF in the summer, that it's not just 45 minutes for those players. But I think that when the subs did come, Lori, as you were just alluding to, Ashley Sanchez also got a spell in there in the midfield, a couple minutes. I'm glad Coffee got significant minutes, but I think Rodman gave a huge immediate spark and in this like energetic, like ready to go, serious kind of spark that she brought onto the pitch. Couple that with a sub in from Megan Rapinoe, who's going to balance that out with her incredible talent and experience level. I think that those subs are crucial, especially at that point in the game. And of course, it does turn the tide goal wise, but I mean, coming out of the half, the no changes. I mean, I'm glad there were no changes, right? Like we didn't see enough from the players.